Here's Grand Travels.
Along with Airplane 312. We talk about the ins and outs of transporting, what I've learned from the RV transport, and then I moved into the mining and wind and solar truck transport. What I learned from RV transporting, Synergy anyway, is kind of the starting out company. You can go there as beginners as long as you have a clear license. They don't really care who they put on. Well, I wouldn't say they really care, but they're the most lenient. And the reason is because they work with other companies. They're kind of the entrance door into RV transport. And then once you get 6 months to a year down from that, you can qualify for Bennett, which is a different RV transport company, or you can qualify for the, I can't think of it now. Horizon, yeah, Horizon's the other one that requires 6 months to a year out worth of actual RV transporting business before you can drive for them. And so Synergy's kind of the open door company that pays a little less. They pay what was it, 75 cents, 85 cents, or 95 cents, depending on the rig, a mile, and then you can jump that and go into it over a mile if you got onto Horizon, which is a different RV company that requires 6 months to a year out. Which I did not do that. I did not take the step from Synergy to Horizon because they're sister companies. But in the meantime, I got tired of doing the RV transport because you take an RV to an RV dealership and it could take up to 4 hours where you sit there waiting for the guy to go through every little thing because they have to go through all the manufacturer defects, which is not your problem. You're just the driver. And I got tired of them having to go through all that, even though the driver should just be the outside door scratches and kind of where the driving seat is and stuff like that, where they check out the basics of the RV and write it off. Okay, nothing that this was caused by the driver. Here you go, and bye bye. That's all it should take.
But
But they
it
don't. But they don't. Sometimes they take up to like 4 hours.
plus I have to check the inside so that there's no other damages that occurred.
Yeah, but by what I mean by manufacturer defects is they have to run all the bids down, they have to run all the slides out, and all this other stuff. Well, our drivers are told not to ever do that, not to run the slides out, not to run the fridges, not to run the bids up and down, not to touch any of it. Just drive and sleep, and that's it. And if we get caught doing any of that, stuff, we can get uh, banned from their company for doing it. So us drivers don't even bother with it. We just sleep and drive. At least that's what all I ever did. But then I found Worldwide Transport, which is the Worldwide Drive Away, which is they do mining and oil and wind and solar trucks, like utility truck bids and flatbed truck bids. And the thing about that is you go there, they take one look at it inside and out, sign it, and there you go. Because those companies with the rental truck companies, we for Worldwide we did Premier Truck Rental mostly. 3/4 of the time we ran the Premier Truck Rental trucks around, and they're just rental trucks that they drive 300,000 miles off of, and then they go and auction them off. But by the time they get 300,000 miles in, that customer is paid for like two more trucks for the cost of one. And so they're not too picky as long as you don't do too much damage to it or anything. They just take a look at it real quick, make sure nothing's dented or scratched, and out the door you go, and signed and done.
And also, from a long, long time ago, he talked about freight. What freight means he's still in the same vehicle.
Yeah, well, I was
Mm.
doing expediting is what you mean. You doing the high top van, well, you could start out in the cargo van or the high top, but they put a pallet in there, and then you take that from A to B, and
Uh,
they unload that pallet and you go again. And I like doing that if I had the money, like won the lottery or had a high enough money where I could buy my own high top van and do my own insurance and my own authority and everything. That'd be the way to go into expediting because then you're your own boss all the way around, and you could still stay an independent contractor. What I was doing was working with a fleet owner. They owned the van and I drove it, and we were supposed to be 50-50 partners on that because they're just employing me to be a driver to still keep that van moving, so they don't have to do it.
and it's virtually the same thing. You're pretty much an independent contractor. You could say you're a free owner.
Well, you're supposed to, but in reality, they like to try to run you like you're an employee. The three fleet owners that I work for, there's one that hardly ever bothered me at all. As long as the van was moving, he didn't care. He cared more about making sure the maintenance for the tires and everything was on par. That I was keeping up on that part of that deal, than making sure that I was doing stuff with the van. I could see their part of it. They want that van making money, but I didn't want to work for someone that's going to try to pretend to be my boss when we're 50-50. We're supposed to be 50-50. And that's what I didn't like about expediting, but I would love doing expediting if I had my own van my own authority and insurance, so I got around all the middleman. Because if my own authority, I could just get on the load board, say this is the bid for the whatever load I want, put it in, go to the warehouse, have them put it in the van and drive it to wherever, drop it off, have them take it back out of the van, and I make the money, and I cut all the middleman out.
Yeah, it could be virtually like this pillow right here.
Yeah. Whatever I was picking up, whatever the load happened to be. That would be the way to do expediting, in my opinion. But then that costs, I think, 50,000 or something like that for a decent long bid sprinter just to start out, and then that's not counting the $10,000 worth of stuff you got to put in there to equip it to live in it. We don't have to, but I'd rather do that than have like a plain van. I would put insulation in it and a generator and a fridge and all that so you can live in it around, because you're making that your lifestyle. You're in that same van all the time. And so that's the one thing I did like about RV transport into this worldwide driveway transport that I was doing. Is like at least get to switch the vehicles up. So I'm driving something else. I get a little bit different of a driving experience. Some of the trucks have the turning gear on a button. Some of them have the shifter. Some have cruise, some don't. Some are flatbed, some are utility beds, and they do different weights, and there's different ways they drive. And size and stuff like that. And the same with RVs. I was driving Class A's or Class B's or Class C's, and it was changing things up on a weekly basis, which is what I liked about it. And then when I delivered it, I would get changed up again. I would go on a bus or a train or plane or whatever, and my life would change again. But that's the ins and outs of expediting versus transporting. And now I'm gonna go do DoorDash, so I can stay more local.
And then also to let you guys know, if you're going to go transporting or expediting, you might want to get your CDL.
Yeah, if you can do anything to increase your chances for expediting, if you get your CDL, you can carry more weight. If you get your TWIC card, they call it, which is the port, like you go into the train yards or the shipping ports to pick stuff up there, then you increase your chances of being able to get a pallet load into a van for expediting, because you have that card, and not everybody has that, so they can only go with drivers that have it. And a TWIC card gets you into government facilities, so like you go into the mountain in Denver and stuff like that and pick up and drop off loads for them. Sometimes only the only way those loads can go in there is if they have the CDL and the TWIC card. So you increase your chances of being able to get something the more and more you can do.
Plus, if you get, like what he says, the trip card is kind of like a government deal that you pass all the background checks.
Yeah, it's mainly a nationwide background check to make sure you're not some kind of terrorist. Mostly, that's what it's for. And they check your whole background, your 20 years back or so, of what you've been doing.
And they will check with friends, families, and all that.
Yeah, they go deep into that on a TWIC card. Because only certain ports people can go into those ports, because they don't want somebody blowing one of our main ports up, shipping ports. It would devastate the country.
And when he was working for PTI, he didn't have to go through the training and stuff with them. They could say, "Oh yeah, he had that. He worked for us one time. We're good."
Yeah, the second time around. The first time around, it took them 4 months, I think it was, to do my background check, because they had to check 17 states, because anywhere that I'd been. And if you mailed a package somewhere in like Indiana, wherever, they'd have to check that whole state because it showed proof that I was there. So it took them like 4 months the first time around to get on with PTI, but the second time around I was still valid. But they were the same thing, because they work with the railroad. The railroad has to check and make sure that you're not going to come on railroad property and be a terrorist or something. So it was more an in-depth background check for the railroad side of it than PTI. And if people on this video don't know what PTI is, a professional transporting and company, and they haul the train crews for BNSF, or some of them are UP, Union Pacific Railroad. They bring the crews out from the depot to the train.
I think he meant Professional Transportation Industry, Inc.
No, it's in company. It's this. Incorporated, I think, or something. I don't know. Yeah,
Something like that.
But yeah. Basically, they're a taxi company. They're a private taxi company for the railroad, where the railroad train crews don't have to do that. But they employ PTI to do it so that they can take the liability off the railroad. So if something happens to the train crew while they're on the road, it's that company's problem, not the railroad. Say if you get a car wreck or whatever, it takes the liability off the railroad for transporting that crew. That's why they do it independent of the railroad. Some places have a BNSF crew van if they're close enough, that the depot is close enough to where the main siding, but it only goes to that one siding, to that depot and that one siding, and it's usually just across the yard. Anything further than that, they hire PTI to transport people.
Or any other company that's
Yeah,
out
yeah.
there.
There's a couple other ones that are in the southwest or whatever, but PTI is the main one, and then there's a couple other ones down south that are about as big. But PTI more and more has become the railroad's go-to company.
And BNSF is considering later on, in the way future, they're probably going to be create their own company and do it that way.
There's a possibility, but like I say, they're trying to keep the liability off the railroad, so that's the only reason if they could come up with enough insurance to cover those train crews, because if they put a train crew in a thing and then the driver kills them in a semi, everybody that's in that family can sue related to that train crew, and it could be like 6 people in a train crew, depending, 2 or 3 train crews together. So
And
they're trying to keep the liability off of it.
And the family of the person can also sue.
Yeah.
For.
And it would cost the railroad a lot of money, but by putting their train crew in an independent company, they can say it's that company's fault, not the railroad's.
Unless it's proven that the BNSF made the van.
Well, yeah, unless it has something to do with like a BNSF train crossing, like the PTI van somehow let it terminate it, then they'd be up the creek. But yeah.
Or there's other companies out there too. It's not always BNSF. There's like 4 or 5 different train companies.
And I liked working for PTI, except for the whole, it comes back to you have a boss, and the boss regulates when you can and can't use cruise control. Like you can't use cruise control at night. I could only drive at night during certain time periods and not. And I had to take this and had to take that, whether you're feeling sick or who knows what, because your boss is like, either do it or not. And so between all that, I just want to be my own boss.
And also, when you're transporting yourself, watch your hours. Treat it as, if you don't get your CDL, try to treat it as if you got a CDL.
Well, you have to anyway. We were running logs, so you have to do it's kind of a, not quite as strict as the semis logs, but you still have to run logs, daily logs. You have a 14-hour shift, you have 11-hour drive time, and you have 10 hours at each day that you have to take off in a row together consecutively, 10 hours.
And once you hit the magical, I believe, 60 or 70 hours, you have to have a 30-hour reset.
Yeah.
If you're a truck driver and we said it incorrectly, please make a comment below so people will pin it if it's good enough. So.
Well, the main thing I didn't have to do is because I didn't have a sleeper, is I didn't have to go by the sleeper thing. Truck drivers can split their sleeper time up, so they can split that 10 hours into 4 hours and 5 hours if they had to. If they're at a shipper and they're waiting for the shipper, they can say they took a 4-hour nap in the sleeper and still be able to get on the road and drive. We couldn't do that. We had to do 10 consecutive hours no matter what.
So that's the ins and outs of transporting and expediting, pretty much.
Yeah, the details are on it if you're interested in transporting, expediting, or going into DoorDash or working for PTI.
Or any other company like that.
Yeah.
So like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time, and peace out.
Peace.